are you?
I'm good. I've been running around, so busy, but now I'm settling in. Nice to be here with you.
Nice to be here with you. So how do you help pregnant mothers settle when they're running around so much in today's world?
Well, I teach birthing from within classes, and one of my goals for folks is when they come through my door, I want them to feel sort of transported into I don't want to really use the word sacred space. It's because sacred space is all around us, but I like them to come into a beautiful space. So I have I have red chairs that I make in a circle, and I have a candle in the middle of the group, and I have different symbols and things to just beautiful things. I have a statue of a woman who's sitting pregnant, sort of contemplating, in the middle of the circle. So I guess that's one of the things that I do is I set up the space in a really beautiful way. How do I help women settle into themselves? I think by settling into myself. I think that when I'm settled into myself, it's the first step, I think, of having someone settle into themselves is by sorry, I'm kind of just getting used to this.
You know what? Just take your time.
Right.
Say this as many times.
Okay. Yeah. So, how I help women settle into themselves is simply by being aware of my own body and settling into myself. I think, and by doing that, just like when we're at a birth, our energy is picked up by the other women, by especially a woman who's birthing, because when a woman is birthing, she's so open and so receptive and vulnerable to things that can be helpful and things that can be not so helpful. And so when I'm with a woman in class and when I'm with a woman in birth, I try to my first thing that I do is I'm aware of my own energy. I'm aware of when my breath is tight or when I'm feeling tight, and I'm always trying to loosen and be soft in my own body. So that's one way, I think, is by just checking in with my own self.
That's beautiful.
But there are many ways. But I would say that would probably be the most simple and most profound way.
I'm not sure how. I feel like you have so many things to say that I just want to listen. So I'm open to doing that. But if you want me to ask you questions, I can.
Maybe to warm me up.
Is it my husband?
I think so. So maybe if you warm me up a little with some questions.
Yeah, sometimes it helps.
Yeah.
I'm just going to see if he's Kevin, is that you opening and shutting? Are you opening and shutting your car? Are you opening and shutting your car door? Because I can hear it, just so you know. Thank you, sweetie. I don't think he realized it. So I will ask you some questions.
Yeah, just to warm me up.
I think I told you a few of these. I mentioned a few of these to you before, but if there's a question that for some reason you don't think it's just not going to resonate with you, then we just pass, okay?
Yeah.
So, and I'm actually going to just make this up because this isn't the question I really feel like I want to ask you today. So, my question is, how did you become what you are? How did you decide to do this work?
Sorry. Okay. For some reason, I'm feeling a lot of emotions welling up. Well, I mean, prior to becoming a mother myself, I never really gave much thought to birth or pregnancy, and at the time, but I've always been involved with women's issues. Prior to becoming a mother, and women's empowerment issues. Prior to becoming a mother, I worked with domestic violence survivors who were Asian immigrants and refugees who couldn't speak English, most of them. And I worked at a shelter with them, and was pregnant at the time, and gave birth, to my son. And I had a difficult pregnancy in a lot of ways. Hold on, let me
just take your time.
Yeah, let me take my time. I don't know if I want to go into that so much.
Yeah, and that's okay. And you don't have to, and I just want to make sure that this is totally running.
How did I decide to go into this work?
Just want to double check because I don't want to miss.
Yeah, I don't think I want to go into that whole story that I always tell. Yeah.
And is there something that you could share, because it sounds like it's so deep and so passionate?
Yeah, let me think.
That would be feeling safe for you.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's such a big question, because it's such a big part of who I am. And okay.
Do you want me to do some lighter ones, and then we can evolve into this? All right, let's talk about on Maui. What are some of the traditional rituals around pregnancy, birth, and postpartum for the people of the island?
Right.
That you...
Well, I'm not Hawaiian. I was born and I was raised here, but I can't really speak for the indigenous tradition or the indigenous cultures. Someone else could do that, not myself. I think that for the most part, we are pretty westernized in our thinking, in our attitudes around birth, pretty much parallel the attitudes of the rest of the country. People are busy, people are overloaded with information, people have a lot of fear, for sure. So I don't know if there's anything that's specific to Hawaii. We have a difficult situation because women don't have a lot of options per se, or options that are really supported. And so women can birth in the hospital, or women can birth at home. I hear over and over again that women would like a birth center. Birthing at home is met with a lot of resistance from especially the medical community. Women who choose to birth at home aren't supported by their obstetricians. In fact, the majority of obstetricians will, if you disclose that you are having a home birth, they will not see you. They will refuse care. And that is like the community clinic, which is funded, state funded. That blows me away. So it's actually pretty hostile, I would say, and it's become more and more hostile to midwifery care. So women who want to birth at home aren't supported by the medical, the obstetric community, and that can be challenging for a lot of women. It's actually, I support women both at home and at the hospital. And it can be, and what's difficult for me, I think, is to see that women are the ones who are sort of caught in the middle between this divide. And that's really hard to see, hard to be a witness to.
Can you share just a little bit about what that can look like in a person's life when they're birthing their baby? That divide, how does that kind of manifest itself in, say, for example, their birth experience?
Well, I think women feel uncomfortable. Most women feel uncomfortable basically lying to their obstetrician is kind of what has to happen, because if they tell their obstetrician that they're having home birth, they wouldn't receive prenatal care from their OB. So I think women feel it's kind of a weird place. I mean, women are so vulnerable during their pregnancy, especially as they're right about to give birth, and to feel like they're hiding something from their obstetrician, it's a strange feeling. But yet they have no choice, they're kind of pushed into that corner, unfortunately. And so if a woman is needing to transport to the hospital, sometimes that can be okay, that can work. She may not disclose that she's so if she's transported to the hospital, they can't refuse care to her, so that could be a smooth transition, or it could be very difficult. There was a case where a woman had to transfer into the hospital, and the obstetrician on call refused to see her.
Can you say that again? I think you'll be happier if you do.
Oh.
Say that whole, just that.
There was an extreme situation, I don't think this happens all the time, where a woman had to transfer into the hospital, and the obstetrician on call refused to see her. I think that he was reprimanded. I believe he was reprimanded by the hospital for that. But so that would be an extreme situation.
What about a more settled situation?
I think.
What about, say, if a woman was having a home birth and then the midwife felt like things were going outside of normal range and they transported into the hospital? How would she be treated any differently than?
I can't really speak to that, because I haven't actually been with a woman transferring into the hospital, from a home birth. Usually the midwives will go with the mother there, so I can't speak to that.
So, can you tell me just a little bit more about the sort of, it sounds like there's obviously there's many different kinds of people here in Maui, and it's a hugely diverse group, right? So there's lots of people that have moved here, and then, like you said, you were born here, so this is your home, but not your home from your ancestors is somewhere else. But can you just speak a little bit about the sort of the diversity and how that just, even though we are, that you've mentioned westernized, we still are so much, our roots are so important, aren't they? So just kind of, could you speak to that a little bit about, I just went and saw the most beautiful show last night. It was in Lahaina, and I'm just getting tingles again. I cried like 3 or 4 times. And there was one scene where the people that had come over were workers in the sugar fields, and they were the Asian people, and they had these masks on because they were having to breathe in the dusk. And I mean, my heart was just pounding, and I didn't even really know the history very much. But I know that what my body felt like watching, and that it feels like there's this, amazing history here, but a painful history too, to move forward.
Right. I don't even, I think that may not be so unique, though. I think that there is that everywhere we go. People, in terms of people being used for their labor and and the suffering that people undergo all over this world. So I don't know exactly what specifically you want me to
Well, I think
speak
just
to.
so people understand it, and then people can identify with that wherever they are.
Yeah.
Wherever they're watching. So they just have a little bit of a background. I don't feel like I'm an authority.
So
maybe you don't either, but I think you're well.
A background on who's here?
Yeah, and how it all just came about, just briefly,
How it all came, how the Hawaiian Island, how the folks came about?
Just a little bit.
Okay.
Just a little bit.
Well, there is a pretty diverse population. Growing up here, the population was a lot smaller than it is now. We had, I think when I was a kid, we had one escalator that just went down, and you actually had to take the stairs to go up, and we had no Kmart, or it was a very different kind of place growing up here. I think that my generation, I'm 37, a lot of folks, I had a really privileged education. I went to private school here and things like that, and a lot of us, we left Hawaii, to go to college, and many of us stayed on the mainland. I came back, when I became a single mother, to be with my family. I can tell you that the folks that I see coming to Birthing from Within are, I would say, 75% of them are people who are from the mainland. And I would be curious to know, the statistics and the folks who are choosing home birth. Are they local people, or are they people transplants, from the mainland? I would say most of the doula clients that I have are people from the mainland. Sorry, I'm just kind of going all over the place. But when I'm able to be with someone that I grew up with in terms of supporting them in birth, local people who I went to school with, people who have their roots here, there is a lovely feeling to that. It's deeply satisfying, and I think for me that is one of the sadness, some of the sadness that I have around this sort of divide. This, we can call it the OB midwifery, hospital home birth divide. I think it's really sad to me because this is my home, and I would like to. See more women. I would actually like to see more women served by midwifery care. That's my personal bias, but I would like to see midwifery legalized and professionalized, and that's my own personal opinion. I know that there's a diverse opinion among midwives who have very valid reasons for their feelings either way. So. But I would like to see that for our islands. It's my vision, but I think there's a lot of divide even within the midwifery community as to whether that would be the most appropriate way or the most beneficial way, and I think they have valid concerns, to promote, in any way.
I hear you. There's always that element of risk that you take when you become regulated.
Yeah.
But being in a regulated system and being in a non-regulated system.
Yeah, you've done both.
My personal opinion, which this isn't about my personal opinion, but just to let you know, I like it better. I don't like hiding. And like what you were describing about the woman, to me, whenever you have that like dichotomy inside where you can't be fully authentic and transparent.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially when you're giving birth. Especially when you're doing something that demands such integrity. Giving birth, it demands that, and to have that divide, it just doesn't feel good. When we're ready, again, when we're preparing to give birth, in an ideal situation, all the pieces just settle down and everything kind of feels okay. And you're just everything feels like it's right in its place that it needs to be, and that certainly is ideal. That often doesn't happen for us, and that's okay too. It's a learning process. But
Monique, can you speak a little bit about how much we do need those people that are trained, the obstetricians, those people who, when things do go outside of normal range, as much midwives are there for people who are low risk, and how much it would be, this dream vision would include not only midwives but of course embrace those people who can perform a cesarean when one is needed.
Absolutely.
So I kind of want to just get that well-rounded sort of view of things, because my last interview was kind of a little bit on one side.
Yeah, sure.
I really want to have that.
Well, I can tell you that I have, that I consider myself to be a bridge builder. It's just, it's kind of my personality and my character, and I can see where other people are coming from, and I think, and I think in a lot of ways the obstetricians are coming from a valid place given what they know and what they understand. They only see, for example, they don't see the successful outcomes of home birth, which are most of the outcomes. Most of the outcomes are good outcomes, but those are the outcomes that the obstetricians don't see because they're seeing the transports. So based on those conclusions, they're thinking like, that home birth is a risky, dangerous situation based on what they see. So I think it's really, it has to do with maybe lack of education, people are very divided and they're really in their corners. Anyway, I'm not feeling that articulate. I'm feeling really nervous.
I feel like you're just doing a
But
job.
I have one. In fact, the very first birthing from within class that I taught here on Maui, the first class I taught ever, an obstetrician was in it. His wife was having a baby, and I thought to myself, "Whoa, I'm feeling a little scared by this. I'm not sure how this is going to go." But he ended up really loving the class, and he's been really encouraging me in the community, and he's been a real ally for me. So anyway,
I really like that.
I participate on some task force in the hospital, for example, the breastfeeding task force, and I do that really not because I think I can make change in the hospital. I have no interest in putting my energy into making change in the hospital. No way. But I go there so that I can form relationships, with the nurses and with the doctors, so that when I support a woman in labor, there's a relationship that's formed, and I think that can only benefit, the family that I serve.
So one of the things, Monique, that I really want to do is I really want to touch couples who are at a crossroads of making choices about
how they might birth.
Yeah, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be so much about where, but about how can they prepare for
right.
that.
Yeah.
Important.
Well, that is really why I resonate so much with birthing from within. And I think, had I not found birthing from within, I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing. It really resonated with me. It's philosophically, because it's not so much about the outcome per se, because, there's so much about birth that we can't control. We can certainly do the work. We can, hire the team that we feel safe with and who we feel like, who we trust. The healthcare team, whatever that may be. We can, prepare, taking prenatal classes, we can read up, we can educate ourselves. I think there's certainly a level of preparation that I think is important. However, preparation does not guarantee a certain outcome. And I think a lot of folks think that it does. They maybe, a lot of folks have it in them because I think we're trained this way. If I really prepare, if I read all these books, if I watch these videos, if I don't eat refined sugar, and I do prenatal yoga every day, and I do my Kegels, and I do this and I do that, then I will have a certain outcome. And sometimes that can happen, for sure. But sometimes that doesn't happen because birth is the teacher. Birth is such the teacher because we cannot control the outcome. And in a way, that's what I love about birth, because you kind of have to let go. And that letting go is whether it's the letting go during a contraction and just surrendering to that energy of birth, or whether it's letting go to giving birth in a certain place, in a certain way, because events unfold in a way that makes another place a more safer option, for example. Giving birth is really about letting go, and that is so hard to do for all of us. And that's what makes birth, the transformative experience that it is, in a way, because every woman gets to a place in her labor where she says, I can't. And I tell the couples as they're preparing, just expect it. And I think they're so relieved to know that we get to a place in our labor, every woman does, no matter how prepared, where she can't go on. And it's a mental, it could be physical sometimes, but a lot of the times it's in the mind. And it's kind of at this place. It's what I call it the edge. Birthing from Within calls it the gate of great doubt. And there's this poem I really love. It says it's about faith. There's also in Birthing from Within, there's the gate of great faith that's also there. And when we're at the edge of all that we think we can handle, and we take that step, we just take that step into, maybe it's that intense contraction, or it's the exhaustion, or I don't know what it could be, but we move through and forward, into this unknown, this place of unknown. One of two things will happen. One, there will be solid ground to stand on, or two, we will be taught how to fly. And I love that, because I think that's what that's the opening, that's the doorway that birth gives to women, is the opportunity to get up and keep going, and to do something really big. And when I say do something really big, that doesn't necessarily mean giving birth in your bathtub with the candle lights on. It's equally, the level of letting go and surrender is equally big when we have to birth by cesarean.
Sorry, I'm getting really emotional.
That's okay.
I really want you to stay with this.
Okay.
This is really special.
Yeah. I guess I've just seen enough women. Well, I don't want to say that. That sounds.
Okay, take it.
Yeah.
I just love that if you talk about the cesarean thing, that would be good.
Well,
I had a cesarean too. So I'm
yeah.
It's personal or what.
Yeah. Well, it's just, it. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why certain things happen. Why, that's a question that I can't even answer. It's sort of beyond me. But I think we can take whatever experience we have, and we can use it as medicine to grow, or to reach a new level in who we are. And I think that can happen in all sorts of ways. And so I don't know what more to say about that.
If you could just say again about how it's not, whether you have a cesarean, or whether you have a hospital birth, or you have a home birth, or whatever, or whether you start out with one plan and changes to another. That's not the most important part.
It's surviving, and not even just surviving, but it's being born. Being born as a warrior, being born as I don't know. I think, so I have so many thoughts about this, and I don't know.
What would you say to a mother who had a cesarean and she feels terrible about it, and she didn't feel good about it? Or what would you say to somebody who maybe they will end up with a cesarean? How can they do that? How can they embrace that if it's not what?
Well, what would I say to a woman who had a cesarean? Well, I would listen to her. I would listen just deeply from a non-judgmental place, and I wouldn't tell her how she should feel, or because it's not my role, but I would listen deeply to her and just hear her and be a witness to her. I think that women do not have a place to tell their birth stories without being judged, or without someone saying, well, that happened to my sister, or we don't really have a place to really tell our stories. And so what I would do is I would really just listen. So I would listen, and I might ask her if to tell me one part of it that she felt really either a powerful moment for her, whether it's something that she thinks about again and again. It could be a really great moment, or it could be a really difficult moment. I would probably ask her to tell me about that, and then I would listen to her. Hold on. Yeah, I just had to shift positions for a second. What would I tell to a woman is I would simply listen to her, and not with my own story going on in my head, like, oh, poor her, what if this happened to her, how terrible. No, I wouldn't sit from that place. I would sit from gosh, sorry,
take your time. Really,
yeah, I would just listen. I would just listen. That's what I would do, and I would validate. And I can tell you a little bit about the way I prepare for couples for a cesarean birth. I will, with all the couples that, I have home birth couples, I have hospital birth couples, I always will go over cesarean birth as being one of the possibilities of the ways that women give birth, to prepare them. And I'll tell you one thing that I talk about that's really helpful. I think it's very helpful because I've seen it work really well, and I've heard it work really well. And that is what we call the energetic push. Okay? And that is, when a woman is giving birth to her baby, okay? In a cesarean birth, it's coming out through a little opening. Because we know babies like to be born from little openings, and the energetic push is like as the baby's being born, it's like a push with your heart and your soul. It's like a push with all of your love and all of your devastation and all of your disappointment and all of your excitement and all of your beauty and all of the emotion and all that who you were and who you will be and everything in that moment. You give everything you've got and you just push that baby out from here. Okay? And somehow that, because I think that may be one of the things that women who birth by cesarean feel like that they lose, the pushing the baby out from the vagina. And so it's like pushing the baby out from a different space in a different way, but the intention is equally powerful. And so it's that energetic push, and I worked with a couple, and they were actually referred to me by an obstetrician. She was getting ready to have her second, cesarean after her first, and she had so much sadness about not being able to push out her baby, and a lot of that came from she was adopted, and I hear my son. But she was adopted, and she felt like her birth mother, not her birth mother, but her mother, never pushed her out. And she had a lot, and she carried that around, had a lot of sadness, and she felt that with her first birth. And we worked around the energetic birth and around different aspects of birthing by cesarean. And when I came back to see her, postpartum, she was just glowing, and her husband was like, "Yeah, you pushed that baby out. I saw that baby jump out, and I know we couldn't have done that without you." It was very sweet, and it was just that one piece that was there for her.
And as you were speaking, I was what about a person that maybe hasn't had that opportunity to have that energetic push, didn't have that guidance beforehand? But she's preparing for another birth. How can she let go of the pain and the challenge of that delivery?
You know,
one of the ways, of course, is talking.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know I don't know really how she will let go, or how. Do you want me to tell my son to be quiet?
Sure. Do you want me to?
Well, I'll let him know.
Probably not going to be.
Yeah.
So even if you just talk a little bit. So.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah? Yeah? Oh, okay, now he has to be quiet. Oh, yeah, you have to be quiet. You can't actually be, if you're going to have to whisper, okay? All right.
He's talking with your husband.
You know.
I don't know where that little. Oh,
Yeah, here.
Oh, perfect. Do you want to slide it under again, like it did?
Sure. Where's the top?
It was a little.
Oh, here it is. Right.
It just makes it so.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect. I like your shirt. It's very pretty.
Thank you. All right.
You're doing really well.
Okay, good. I'm
You
so
sound
nervous.
lovely, and you know you don't seem nervous.
Okay.
You just. Oopsie. This is kind of pulling just a
Okay.
bit there.
Yeah.
It's kind of spot there.
Okay.
You okay there? All right.
Yeah.
Put this on top, and you can take your time. Why don't you have a sip of your tea
Okay.
and just take a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. You're doing beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's meaningful, and I love.
Yeah. You know, I don't know how a woman heals from a cesarean. I don't know really, because it's such a personal journey, and it's a journey that takes a long time. You know, I had birth trauma, my first birth, and well, I don't want to say that. I edit that out. I don't want to talk about my own birth trauma, but I want to say that they were asking.
Actually, can you stop?
Yeah.
I think we're not going to be happy with this being that. It's just like I really want to kind of have it down.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of sticking out, so it's on you.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
There you go.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about my own birth trauma, but I want to say that, that I don't know how a woman heals from a cesarean, because it's a very personal journey, and healing is very, very personal. I do know that it can take a long time, and I think, that a lot of women, I don't want to say a lot of women, but some women are drawn to birth work from their own pain of birthing in a particular way that may have been violent, or may have been difficult or traumatic, and I think a lot of women come to birth from that place, and I know I came to birth from that place, but I couldn't do birth work from that place. And what I mean by that is I cannot, when I first got trained as a doula, which was now, maybe 9 years ago, I had so much of my baggage around birth, so much of my own stuff that I wanted to save everybody from. And because I had all that stuff, I couldn't do birth work, because I couldn't really be present for another woman's experience. I had to really do my own healing. And I think how I healed, or how I'm healing, because it's a process, we're never completely healed. But I feel pretty healed, actually, to tell you the truth. How is, number one, birthing from within was a healer for me. Birthing from within gave me the language to talk about my experience, gave me some exercises, some processes to work with. What else?
Can you give an example of something?
Well, yeah, I can. The first one thing that happened was, you know, we do this work. We do work in birthing from within called. We call it the Tiger Safari, and it has to do with really going into what we're afraid of and really looking at it, because often, you know, the power that our fear can be much more powerful when we actually don't look at it, when it's the chapter of the book that we don't want to read, or things like that. And so one of the exercises we do for the folks who are up for it, and the folks who really they're open enough, they're grounded enough to be able to do it, and that is we kind of go into that fear, we look at it, and we really access our coping skills. That's really the point of it, is to really, how do we cope in the event that this thing that we don't want to happen happens? Because the truth is that we have so many internal resources. You know, so many internal resources. And, you know, at the time that I did my Birthing from Within training, which was in 2008, you know, I was kind of dealing with, you know, a lot of grief and sadness around the fact that my son there was separation between my son and I. You know, we know that when babies are born, women have a profound need to be with their babies. And when they're not with their babies, it kind of goes against our instinct. And so I was kind of, that was sort of this piece that was coming up for me again and again. And I noticed it coming up when I was at births with women, because I would notice it would start to happen for me. I would get a little bit stressed about that. And I was just noticing that. But anyway, so we did this exercise where in my exercises, I went back to that place of, you know, really seeing it, hearing it, feeling it, when, you know, I saw his legs kind of from the side, and then he was gone, you know, and in exercise, I really tapped into my internal coping skills of coping with that situation, and it was a visualization, and I saw us connected. It wasn't a physical connection, but it was a emotional, heart, spiritual connection, and so there were two things that I realized from going through that process. The first thing I realized was that I had that I carried sort of an irrational fear of being away from my son. And he was 8 at the time. And I realized, whoa, that was from his birth, it's irrational fear of being separated from him. So that was one thing that I realized, which was very helpful. The other thing I realized was that by visioning this cord, this light, this connection between him and I, it softened that for me. And I don't want to say it made it totally go away, the sadness, but there was something there that was starting to grow in its place. It was a new image, a new idea. And see, the subconscious mind doesn't really know if something really happened, if it didn't happen, if it happened in the past, if it's happening now. It's kind of like it's not concerned with that. So there was a part, I think, of my, you know, I was really able to kind of live with that and bring that into me, this feeling of being connected to him. And that was, I think, one of the pieces of my healing journey was actually a very simple exercise that had a very deep impact on my relationship with my son, actually, because I think, you know, so that was one thing. It's working with pregnant women. It's listening to their stories. You know, I use birth in a way. I use it to grow myself. And what I mean by that is when I'm with a couple, when I'm at a birth, I'm paying attention to where I'm still stuck, for one. You know, like, oh wow, that's still bothering me. That's really interesting. I'm feeling it in my body, and then I know I have a little more work to do.
How do you feel that just really going into that place of the fears, just in general, even if you haven't had a past birth experience, but just your own sort of way of seeing things that you've picked up from your family and society and your life, or your own experiences combined. How can that be so powerful in helping people just move forward without the resistance of that fear being so powerful?
Right. I think because number one, it's all in our imagination. You know, if we're projecting into the future, you know, I'm afraid of being transferred to the hospital, I'm afraid of a cesarean. It's just a movie, it's a story, it's an image, it's not even real. So we can look at it that way. And then the second thing is, like I said, in this exercise, it's also about accessing our coping skills, because that's really, it's like how, you know, if that were to happen, how would, it's kind of hard for me to describe because it's so experiential, it's such a hands-on exercise, but it's about accessing the resources that we have that are internal, that are external, that are, you know, that are related through relationship or through God or through, you know, animals or plants or, you know, whatever it may be. There's so it's about you know, accessing our resources, our coping resources. How is it important? It's just like it's kind of like And see when we're sitting with fear during our pregnancy, you know, it's our body responds physiologically. I mean, it secretes a little bit of adrenaline, a little bit of tightening, a little bit of closing. You know, every time we think about this, we get a little bit of surge of adrenaline. And in preparation and preparing for childbirth, one of the things that is helpful to do is actually to work with the fear, to look at it, to access our coping skills, so that when we're actually in the birth, we've kind of tamed that tiger. We've kind of softened it a little. It's like, you know, it's like, I don't know, I like to, you know, in my classes and my work with parents, I like to, how do I say this, but what I am looking to pull out of them, because it's not something that I put inside of them. They're there. It's in themselves, and they're growing it. And that is this real feeling of going for it, of real just of diving right into it, of just saying yes to it, and that includes saying yes to the contractions, and it includes going right into our fear. It's that same energy. It's that same, you know, when we talk about a birth warrior, it's this energy of just it's just of being courageous, you know. And I think part of birth preparation involves growing that, accessing that, building upon that, pulling it out, making it bigger. Courage. You know, it's that. You know, it's finding, and so it's finding those little seeds of courage, and it could be, you know, I even ask folks, you know, was there any time when you felt really afraid, when you felt uncertain, when you felt like you know what, and you went for it, and you did it, and you just went through it. I always try to, I try to elicit those memories. I want that to be a feeling that people get in touch with, you know, as they're preparing for birth. And I elicit that feeling, and then I attach it right into, you know, this is right into, how do I say it, like, right into how we cope with a contraction. You know, I take that, and people come up with all kinds of things. I mean, it's amazing. People, everything from here we hear a lot. I hear a lot surfing. You know, this huge wave, and this, you're on the board, and you're not quite sure, but you've got to go for it, or it's going to just flip you over, and you're going to get knocked in the head. You know, and I was with a woman during birth, and prior to preparation, she was talking about what really hooked her, or really got her, what she could really feel was this idea of dropping into a wave. Because we surf here a lot, so it's dropping into a wave. And when I was at her birth, she was saying, "Okay, do I drop into the wave now?" And she knew that energy. She knew that, and she could do it with the contraction because she had lived it already. And we've all lived those times already, because we're human, and we've all done that. And folks come up with all kinds of things, like a woman who, just some examples, like, who was backpacking in Central America, and all her friends went home, and she was like, sitting there at the bus stop with her suitcase, and she was like, "Okay, what do I do? Do I get on that bus and keep doing this adventure, or do I go home?" And that was that energy that she hooked into, which was that same energy that she would need during birth. So it's getting people in touch with that, and it's everyone has that story. Everyone's lived it, and so when they can access that, it gives them confidence for being able to access that in labor, because we all have it. So the way that I do childbirth classes is I don't give them a whole bunch. This is what I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you this. I'm going to give you that, and I'm going to give you, I'm going to download this information into your head. It's not that kind of learning. It's really about accessing what they already know and they already have. And sometimes it's buried under layers. And some people, I'll tell you, very few people who come through my classes, but some people can't access it. Their life is too chaotic, they're too caught up in something that's difficult, and they can't access it, and that's okay. They'll access it later. It wants to, anyway, so
Monique,
lots of stuff.
No, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I wanted to just ask you how you feel about symbolism and about objects and things like that, bringing them to your birth, creating something that's symbolic.
Well, what we do is we have folks, Birthing from Within sorry, I'm going all over. I'm going to start all over. What I have folks do, and this is an idea that I got from my Birthing from Within training, and it's creating a birth bundle. Just like we create, indigenous folks create like a medicine bundle, or, as they go into a journey, and so many different fairy tales and folk tales, there's a bundle of what we bring, what we collect, And in my Birthing from Within classes, on the last night, everyone brings their bundle. And we open it up and we talk about it. And what's in the bundle is one object that, it's an object, when you see it, you have a connection, there's a feeling there, and that is a connection to all the women in your family who've given birth. It could be your immediate family, or it could be your human family. Some object that will connect you in with the women who've given birth. The other object is something that connects you with your partner, if you have a partner. Something of your relationship, something that connects you with your partner. And then the last little object is something that connects you with your baby, reminds you of your baby. So it's some kind of symbol. And then, you tie that bundle up. And I had a doula client, and she brought her birth bundle, and she was in transition. I really active labor, and she was just like, birth bundle, birth bundle, birth bundle. She opened up her birth bundle, and she had a little egg that her mother actually had used during her labor. I remember that. I don't remember what else she had, but it was just an object that she could hold in her hand, and that she could just kind of focus on and ground her. And so we have women make their little birth bundles. Yeah.
Do you have a birth bundle we could look at some point?
I don't think I have. I don't have a birth bundle.
It would be neat to have a little birth bundle, just even something that shows the sampling birth bundle.
Yeah.
While you're talking about it.
Yeah.
We can work on that. But, okay, so I would like you, if you can, to speak to the fathers, and how do you bring them and their important role,
Mm-hmm.
how that looks.
Well, I think fathers are often neglected in traditional childbirth classes are, I don't know if I want to call it that, but they're often kind of on the sidelines. It's kind of, there's not so much focus on the father's journey. You know, we often focus on the mother's journey, sometimes on the baby's journey, but not often on the father's journey. And you know, and I think it's an interesting role, and it's an interesting place, because I don't think fathers have really been involved in birth for generations. And even when we look at indigenous birth, I'm not sure fathers, you know, really had a role in the birth room. You know, they were out hunting, or they were protecting, and so we don't have a lot of guideposts. Dads don't have a lot of role models. A lot of we don't really have that, you know. But in our culture, there, you know, women want fathers, and fathers want to be a part of the whole birth preparation and birth process. So how do I prepare fathers? You know, one, I do a lot of listening and a lot of validating, that a lot of dads want to, there's a lot of pressure on fathers to get it right, to know what to say, to know what to do, and a lot of expectations, but yet not a lot of instructions, right? So part of what I do is I have a dad come and do a father's class, so that fathers have a space to really talk about what their fears are and what their concerns are. And I have a lovely dad, he just moved to the mainland, who would run that group. It's really, how else do I mean, you know, there's certain things that I do. Well, you know, I give dads tips on, you know, how to massage, but I think that's less important. You know, I think dads and moms, more so dads, seem to get really focused on what can I do? You know, what can I do? Like, give me my list of things to do. And I think it's very male, kind of a male trait in a way. And it's lovely. And I think it's great that dads want to be there and support in all of these ways. But I think one thing that comes up through our conversations is that what's more important than doing is actually being, simply being present, you know. And I think that some dads, that might be a little bit hard to understand because they're so focused on the doing, but for a lot of dads, that's a really big relief, that there's nothing really that they have to do. I say hire a doula to do that stuff, you know, hire a doula, and you, dad, just be present. Which is actually quite challenging to do for some people, you know, because we're so busy doing. But it's simply being present. And the analogy that I give dads and I give moms is, so the woman who's birthing, she's like the river. She's flowing like the river, okay? And sometimes that river it's calm, it's tranquil, you can see the bottom, you can see the pebbles on the bottom. And sometimes often that river, it's turbulent, and it's just moving. And the dads are the banks of the river, okay? And the way that it works is the banks of the river don't just plop down and say, okay, river, here's where you're going to flow. It doesn't work that way. The banks are formed by the river. And the more solid, you know, the banks of the river are solid, they're grounded, their roots go deep down into the earth. The more grounded and solid the banks of the river are, the deeper the river can flow. The deeper the woman can go, because she knows that she needs to go deep into labor land, deep inside to do the work that she needs to do. So I think it's not only the dads who are the banks of the river, it's also the birth team. It's the support. But so I like to get dads to kind of get into feeling, what does that feel like to be the banks of the river? That solid kind of support. And so we do, you know, pain coping exercises around that, where the dads are supporting, and I have them do experiential work so that they can embody that and feel into that. So that's sort of some of the ways that I prepare dads, or that I work to how I work with dads. Yeah.
I have two other thoughts.